All right, we're live and we are discussing Network today. And there should be, and this is a film from 1976, there should be a link in the description for any of you guys that are watching. If you want to join the discussion about this incredible movie
Incredible
that has
movie.
so much to say about the world that it was made in, which was was almost 50 years ago now,
Yeah.
and still has so much and maybe even more to say
And
about the world we live in today.
this wouldn't even qualify as an obscure film to most people, but I think we can count it because this film is 1976. Okay. This is the year Jaws came out. So this movie, all right, was a mainstream movie. Okay.
Won many awards with
many awards
famous people
with
in
several words two words specifically that my mother had to ask me to Google in it. She had never heard, one being piquant.
Spicy.
He says, we're playing this scene like I'm the old piquant husband, which means guilty of sin.
Oh, guilt. Oh, right.
Yeah. And
different spelling.
Paddy Chayefsky is very educated and wrote, but could write very not educated. We should say Paddy Chayefsky is one of the main inspirations, top 4 of Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
Of Richard Pryor, Paddy Chayefsky, specifically Marty, his earlier movie, David Mamet, and who is the other one that Quentin is very...
I don't know.
I can't remember.
So you're talking about writers or writer directors or what?
They're all writers or writer directors.
I don't know.
Kurosawa? No, not Kurosawa. No, but as far as writing style,
yeah.
His foreign writing style, I think he said it was David Mamet. If you imagine David Mamet, Paddy Chayefsky in the rhythm of Richard Pryor. And then but that whole there were no guys going there were no movies of, hey, what do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? Until Paddy Chayefsky. And then what's so interesting is we're watching Network.
And so Paddy Chayefsky, who's clearly a predecessor of David Mamet, probably had a great influence on David Mamet as a screenwriter.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe even as just a playwright.
Yeah. I'm sure.
Because David Mamet takes that type of style of chatter to an extreme.
My grandfather's favorite movie was Marty, because he said that's what guys were like. He had never seen a movie about guys.
Yeah.
Like he had never seen a movie with Butcher talking about, dogs like us, to a girl, like, other people, but dogs like us, So there's no one talking like this pretty much in Network. They're using such big vocabulary, SAT words, as we used to say in Ridgewood, New Jersey. My mother, who's, highly educated and has a dated language as well, had me Google 2 words. And one was the one he's coming in and he's saying, I am the prophet of, and he says, like, he uses a noun which basically says I'm electricity. I'm lightning shooting from, and I can't remember that word, but anyway, so this is Paddy Chayefsky, who was best friends. The inner 3 were Neil Simon, Bob Fosse, and Paddy Chayefsky. Yep, Fosse. So, and you should see Fosse Verdon because he's depicted in it. And then also, the other thing I was going to say is, going back to why this is an obscure film. This is a year once Jaws came out, there is a big change in the movies. This is a moment where Roger Corman goes, oh no, the big budget movies are going to be like my movies. They stole my mojo with Jaws.
Yeah.
So yeah.
This movie is probably a little bit was probably a little bit highbrow on a certain level for a mainstream audience.
Oh yeah.
And and I think I would say, to second that, I mean, it's obscure enough that I had never even heard of it, and I love old films. Like I honestly, and I'm embarrassed to say, because like I had never even heard of this film, um, and so like this is kind of our first like major motion picture pick, but I think it's a good one
That's a
because
great one.
like like I've heard of Marty, I've heard of like a lot of other. This didn't win the Academy Award for Best Picture, I don't think, but it won
It
many
won Best
Academy Awards.
Screenplay,
Won Best Screenplay. Okay,
Best Actress, Best Actor. So,
Best Supporting Actor. Ned Beatty won for.
no, he was nominated.
Oh, he was nominated.
Nominated.
Oh, okay.
Peter Finch won. Faye Dunaway won. The screenplay won, and something else won.
Okay, so it won a lot of awards, and I had never heard of it. And I'm sure once we start going on the streets of New York City asking random people, "Have you heard of this movie that we're about to discuss?" If you do that with this movie, Network, I bet 9 out of 10 people have never even heard of it.
Yeah.
So it's a perfect pick because the fact that a movie like this has fallen into any degree of obscurity is something of a tragedy, I would say, because this movie is so incredibly important. It's I think one of the most important, maybe one of the most important movies ever made.
Yes,
it's absolutely insane.
It was at the time it was made. Sidney Lumet, I think, Best Director, probably won.
And let me back that with another statement. I don't think when they made it, they realized how profound this movie would.
They didn't. If you listen to the commentary, which was on the DVD that I originally saw it on, and I'm sure is available somewhere out there, people, they said they had no idea they were making fun. There was no Fox News at that time. There was the idea of news. This is a time, I mean, you see it in the opening of Cronkite. It was a generation of guys who were hired to just read the news on TV.
Right. Well, let's give people a taste of the Ned Beatty scene, which sort of, it doesn't make any sense if you haven't seen the film.
Out of context, it makes no sense.
It's totally out of context, but it's totally brilliant anyway, just to give people a sense of the style.
Yeah.
And that this is the shortest amount of screen time that an actor has been on screen in a film where they're nominated for an Academy Award, I believe.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. So let me see. Let me make sure we can do this right. Present, share screen.
What we call in my class a monologue.
Yes, it's an incredible monologue.
It's a monologue.
Can you see that on the screen?
I can see that on the screen.
How are you now? Who is it? We're going to take you into our conference room. Seems more seemly a setting than what I have to say. I started as a salesman, Mr. Beale. I sold sewing machines and automobile parts, hairbrushes, and electronic equipment. They say I can sell anything. I'd like to try to sell something to you. Valhalla, Mr. Beale. Please sit down. You have meddled with the primal forces of nature, Mr. Beale, and I won't have it. Is that clear? You think you merely stopped a business deal? That is not the case. The Arabs have taken billions of dollars out of this country, and now they must put it back. It is ebb and flow, tidal gravity. It is ecological balance. You are an old man who thinks in terms of nations and peoples. There are no nations. There are no peoples. There are no Russians. There are no Arabs. There are no third worlds. There is no West. There is only one holistic system of systems. One vast and immane, interwoven, interacting, multivariate, multinational dominion of dollars. Petrodollars, electrodollars, multi-dollars, rank marks, rands, rubles, pounds, and shekels. It is the international system of currency which determines the totality of life on this planet. That is the natural order of things today. That is the atomic and subatomic and galactic structure of things today. And you have meddled with the primal forces of nature. And you will atone. Am I getting through to you, Mr. Beale? You get up on your little 21-inch screen and howl about America and democracy. There is no America. There is no democracy. There is only IBM and ITT and AT&T and DuPont, Dow, Union Carbide, and Exxon. Those are the nations of the world today. What do you think the Russians talk about in their councils of state? Karl Marx? They get out their linear programming charts, statistical decision theories, Minimax solutions, and compute the price-cost probabilities of their transactions and investments, just like we do. We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies, Mr. Beale. The world is a college of corporations, inexorably determined by the immutable bylaws of business. The world is a business, Mr. Beale. It has been since man crawled out of the slime.
Okay. Let me bring your mic back.
All right.
Yeah, we could keep that going, but
Yeah.
let me fix that. I mean, it's just an unbelievable scene.
It's an unbelievable scene, and it is shot, for those of you who have heard, too big for film. You can see how the acting and the shot here makes it okay. He's being gigantic.
Yes.
And the reason it was nominated probably was because, can you imagine a TV or film actor with no theatrical training trying to do this speech without a coach today?
I don't think most people that that don't have acting experience can comprehend any of that. This is a speech that you go over and circle and dash and mark and try. I mean, it could be done in so many different ways, and the fact that
can be, and I think that no matter what your race or creed or gender or how you identify, I take this speech and play with it. I mean, if you like us and you do animation, do something. You could do something with it. But I mean, I would love to see
it's maybe the greatest one of the greatest film monologues of all time. And this film has so many moments like that in it. And some of them you guys might, who have never seen this film, will recall some of the quotes in this film. The "I'm as mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore." I mean, everybody's heard that. It's clipped and clipped and clipped and used in so many different media for basically as an advertisement for Hollywood and the films that we love. But this film is full of it's so quotable, it's so clippable. I really, I can't speak enthusiastically enough about it.
Yeah.
Like, I want to do that monologue now. That monologue is so insane.
Find out how tough it is, man. I mean,
yeah,
you got to have.
There are no
where to breathe.
There are no nations.
Yeah.
There are no Arabs. There are no Russians. There's corporations And it's just incredible, man. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, his influence on Howard, who is insane at this point.
You're talking about Ned Beatty's.
Well, not Ned Beatty's it, but the character.
The character's influence on Howard Beale at this
His
point.
character really just comes out of nowhere.
Yes.
And completely changes everything.
But he also sort of represents, like, it's like, you know how you watch The Wizard of Oz, and it teaches you that there's a man behind the curtain who like runs everything, or like there's like a wizard, and he controls everything, and he's super powerful, and then the idea is you pull back the shade, and it's just some little man,
some little guy.
And okay, that's one way of looking at reality, and it's sort of true. Like, single humans don't have complete control over a situation, but there are massive forces behind the reality that we live in that you don't get to see. And what this is, it's like this guy's standing there. He's like, I never wanted to be here to have to talk to you, little man, that everybody thinks is so big because you're the guy on the TV. I don't care what you talk about, as long as you don't interfere with the business of the business that we're doing. You're not real, you know. And then he asks at the end of this, which we didn't clip the whole thing. He's like, he's like, well, why me? And he's like, because you talk to the TV, dummy. You talk,
because you're on television, dummy, which is what Howard heard in bed when God talked to him the first time. And he comes on, and he goes, he says, you know, I heard this voice, and I said, and he goes, are you God? I never said I was God.
Right. But that's
like, here's not going to blow your mind. I'm not God. So who's talking to him? The devil. And then he hears those words at the end of the speech.
But then that's sort of the reality is that you peel back the layer, and you've got this guy that nobody even knows exists, and he just comes out of nowhere. The big scary man put him in his place. But who knows how many layers of those guys are behind him? Well, and then it's an endless cycle, and that's the world we live in.
Well, in the words of George Lucas, not the greatest dialogue writer in the world, and I'm not comparing to Paddy Chayefsky, but he did have a character concept, at least by the time he got to the prequels, because I think he was flying solo for and free in the beginning. I don't think, you know, I think, you know, he had something of a plan, but not. He said, at one point, right before the prequels came out, I wanted you to think he was the devil, but he's just the guy who gets the devil his cigarettes. You know, like, you know, I don't want to mess with the guy who, you know, gets the devil his cigarettes. But presumably, you know, this is, you know, Jensen has an interest and has worked up the ladder, we know. And there have been instances, it remind me of, and I cannot for the life of me remember who it was, but somebody owned a percentage of the NBC radio, which was going back and forth when Howard Stern was on it. And when Howard Stern got fired, it was rumored that this person had contributed huge amounts to the cleaning of the Statue of Liberty. And Howard made a joke like, well, how are they going to clean her, Robin? Are they going to give her an enema? Is it a douche? I mean, we all want to know, how are they going to clean Lady Liberty?
Right.
And he was let go. Like, and, you know, you can, you know, most people have much more restraint than you imagine. You know, like when you think about the conditioning you've gone through, you know it. You listen to this person is your friend's friend. You've never met them before, and they're talking and talking and talking, and they're wrong, and they're talking and they're talking. So, you know, when they say he has like Wolverine's claws, adamantine and unretractable, like Wolverine's claws are out and they don't go back. Like when Hugh Jackman in Logan is trying to push them back into his body because they don't work anymore as well when he's old. They're adamantine and an adamantine and irretractable interest in keeping Howard Beale on the air. But yeah, we have to say that this was a time before Fox. This was a time where
This was a time before the 24-hour news cycle, where you could tune into a channel on TV where the news was going all the time.
Oh yeah.
There was an hour that you could watch the news, and maybe it was a little bit different hours on one channel or another, but there were only a few channels.
Yeah, there were 2 news stations, and also after the news, there was Johnny Carson and maybe a late night movie, and then they did the Statue of Liberty, and then you saw bars for the rest of the night and heard a tone until they came on at about 5 a.m. with their thing, and
right. And this is 1976.
Yeah, so this is
and so you can kind of remember this time a little bit.
Yeah, I can. So I
because like by the time I was
5.
Yeah, and by the time I was born in 1982, the network programming situation was accelerating quite a bit. I think by the 80s, correct?
Yeah, I can't remember when.
And then you have cable TV.
I didn't say
Fox.
I didn't have cable TV. Bro.
You mean Fox, the TV station, or Fox News?
Fox News, I think, was.
Fox News didn't come around until the mid 90s.
Okay, and Fox, the station, came on before that.
Yes, well before that.
Yeah, but the thing is that with having her come out of like a creative place and start playing with the news is exactly what happened at Fox. Because who created Fox News again?
Rupert Murdoch?
No, it wasn't.
No,
Rupert
he didn't
Murdoch.
create it. He owns Fox News.
Yeah, but he didn't. Who?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
We should know it because Russell Crowe played him, and people, hated on Russell Crowe having to do it, and Russell walked off a show because this guy came out of entertainment.
Yeah, the Fox Broadcasting Company, known simply as Fox, stylized in all caps as Fox, is an American blah 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 blah. It launched as a competitor to the big 3 television networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC. Right.
Yeah.
On October 9th, 1986, Fox went on to become the most successful attempt at a 4th television network.
Yeah.
It was the highest rated free-to-air network in the 18 to 49 demographic from 2004 to 2012, and again in 2020, and was the most watched American television network in total viewership during the 2007 to 2008 season. So it's sort of like the younger generation, kind of like it was at least grabbing the attention of people in that demographic.
Now, this guy, who is the guy who created Fox News?
Oh, Fox. Yeah, that's right. That's what we wanted to find out.
While you're looking, I'll just say he came out of entertainment and he was a producer of theater.
Well, okay, so wait. 20th Century Fox was involved in film and then television production as early as the 1950s.
Oh, yes. But
so you're talking about, the Fox Network's foundations were laid in March 1985 through News Corporation's $255 million purchase of TCS. In May 1985, News Corporation, a media company owned by Australian publishing magnate Rupert Murdoch, that had mainly served as a newspaper publisher at the time of the TCF. It seems like he was there from the beginning. I don't know who you're thinking of.
I know he was, but who was the guy who created the programming for it?
I don't even know what that. I'm not sure I understand that question.
He's the guy basically who,
like the programming director, the guy who came up with the television ideas.
The guy basically said, like, if we don't have the news, we'll make the news. We'll make it up.
Yeah.
he they said if he had been more successful in theater, this wouldn't have happened. It was one of the.
I don't know. Joan Rivers was early.
Yeah, I remember that.
On the
late night talking thing. That was a big deal because she went to go compete against Johnny Carson, and Johnny Carson never talked to her again.
Yeah.
But anyway, Fox News. This is is like
You're
network-
talking now specifically about Fox News.
Yeah.
Okay. And you want to know who started that?
There was a need for right-wing news. No matter how you feel, if you're listening to this, there was.
Yeah.
He
Well, yeah,
knew
because
that-
I mean, if you go back to Rupert Murdoch, not Rupert Murdoch, if you go back to Walter Cronkite and all these people that we thought of as neutral and whatever, the news was a very left-leaning.
they were reading
left-leaning agenda.
Yeah,
and honestly,
reading the New York Times.
Our society had become American society had become a liberal live and let live society after World War II. So it was just part of the zeitgeist to like for people to keep tradition and keep conservatism to themselves. And so this was like sort of an answer to that.
Yeah. So anyway, so this is predicting of it. And what I wanted to say, and I got so far off the topic.
Are you talking about Roger Ailes?
Roger Ailes.
Okay. Gosh, that took a while.
She is Roger Ailes. She comes out of the creative department of the network. And suddenly she's pitching these reality TV. By the way, I think we all know this now.
And when you say she, we're talking about Faye Dunaway's character.
Faye Dunaway's character. Yeah. Faye Dunaway's character, predicts this. And what I was going to say is in the director's commentary, if you can find it, it's on the DVD. Lumet said, we start and it's filmed realistically like a documentary, like the news. By the end of it, we were shooting it like a game show. There's no score in the movie. There's only the sounds of commercials and game show themes and TV themes, which play over the credits in the end. And one of the other things he said, which is interesting.
Wait, there was no soundtrack?
There's no soundtrack.
That's funny that I didn't notice that.
Yeah, there's no soundtrack. There's also no love scene. There's no, there is. But
there's a sex scene, but it's hardly romantic.
Sex scene, but it's very specific. The first time they go home together, you don't see it. It cuts to Howard in bed, hearing the voice of what we think is God.
Right.
But anyway, Faye Dunaway was hired, and Sidney Lumet knew her. And he said, if you put one drop of vulnerability in her, I'll cut it out in the editing, Faye. That's what he said. Now, you have to, people, remember that the gender roles were very different. So when this role came out,
her behavior was more shocking to the viewer, you would say?
She is a boy. Like when she tells the story of being terrible in bed, and this is why, he's, going, that's exactly what I want.
Yeah.
like a young, silly companion who happens to be hot. And
who doesn't take too long and doesn't mind if I don't.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, and had a crush on me. And then, of course, by the end of it, you realize that she's just so honest. He's never seen anything like that before. He's never.
That's true. I never like. It didn't occur to me to think of her character as honest, because the way she's behaving from the beginning looks like the way a duplicitous person acts.
Oh yeah.
And so you're waiting to see who the real her is.
Yeah.
And then that's it. And she even says, like, she's telling him what's going to happen in their relationship before it happens. Like, it's a TV program. She lives her life like it's a TV show. And she doesn't know how to live it any other way.
Okay, so here's what I think about this. I think she represents, because they were big into this in Paddy Chayefsky's time, the danger of the creative impulse let loose. I think she's spontaneous and honest and creative, but not very deep or wise
Right.
or has anything.
She doesn't have anything resembling normal human emotions.
Yeah.
She doesn't have anything resembling heaviness. There's nothing heavy about her.
Yeah, and if you're
There's-
watching from, she also reminds me, if you're watching from out of town, she reminds me of, I remember when I realized that a lot of part of your job as an acting coach,
Excuse me.
and I don't identify with being an acting teacher because a lot of these people get very out of touch. And I've heard acting teachers say, there is no girl who doesn't know how to put on makeup. It's like, okay. It's like, come on, you don't just take a joint out of the hand of a stranger in a park and smoke it, not without checking it, see if it, could be laced or something. It's like, okay, grandpa. Me, but here's the thing is that she may seem, I know someone, I won't mention who it is, but I respect him as an actor and an acting coach. He never thought that there was any vulnerability cut out of this performance. He thought she played it vulnerable. And I said, well, now I understand his problems in relationships with women, that guy. Because I'm watching it now, and I'm much older now. But he was always older than me, about 5 years older. He thought that was a vulnerable performance. And I'm looking at it, and to me, she comes off like when I'm hanging out with a 20-year-old, mature 20-something-year-old now, or a girl who's just been raised by fathers who were much more younger and, like she's college educated and she mentions a schoolgirl crush on him. So like she's a trap, but yeah, and she's tried to fix it, right? She's been to therapy. She's doing all the things. But yeah, it's a very
I also don't, and the more I think about it, it almost seems like it's a cartoonish, unreal type of character. But the more you talk about it, the more I think like there are people that are actually, kind of that's accurate. There are people who are like that.
I was a kid.
That's not like there's no people. There are people that are really, people that throw the word sociopathic around a lot, like they don't have any feelings or whatever. But there are people are genuinely like that, and almost kind of robotic in their
Well, if you're raised, we lost you for a second.
No, I had to fix my camera because it was like blurring up a little bit.
If you're raised in a certain generation, you were partially raised by the TV set. Came home and you watched Gilligan's Island reruns, and you watched, and then watched up to like I Love Lucy, and
right.
Mom and Dad and you had dinner. And then you went off and did your homework, and then, you got whatever else was on. And that's maybe that's why she's good at her job.
Well, I guess I'm not going to resolve this video issue, but I think there we go. Yeah, I think maybe this generation is dealing with a similar problem when it comes to social media, that this is sort of another layer.
I think because she doesn't care about money. She cares about ratings.
Right. Just like somebody would care about likes and comments and engagement.
Yeah, because there's a point
just like we care about these two people who are nominally watching right now and we're wondering what they're thinking.
Are there two nominally people?
I think because we put our I think because we used a I uploaded the thumbnail beforehand this time to see what would happen. I don't know. Anyway. We've had quite a few people coming in and out.
Oh, that's nice
for a minute or two. And if anybody that's watching right now wants to
chime in,
has any questions, has ever seen this movie before and wants to put in their 2 cents, we scared them away.
Yeah.
There it goes. Yeah, that's fine.
You know what? I remember a story, an acting class story. not about this. About
Okay.
Quentin Tarantino. Quentin Tarantino desperately wanted, and Paddy Chayefsky,
Yeah.
the writer, he desperately wanted to write. And if you wanted to do a film, a scene from a film back then, the only way to do it was to play a videotape and pause it and write down what they said.
Right.
And play a tape and pause it and write down what I said. And after a while, I got smart enough to do it with subtitles. I remember when I got to that point. But it was very hard, especially in LA, to get scripts. I'm sorry, I know it's evolved since then. But back then, the place to go was you went to New York for libraries and plays, and you went to LA for a career. That was the thing. So anyway, so Quentin said it was really hard to get, and he would write, and he would go off and jazz off Paddy Chayefsky's Marty, and write and act back and forth. And one day he was doing a speech about wandering into the park and looking at this fountain. And the teacher said, "Oh, yeah, that's great," and blah, blah, blah. And Paddy Chayefsky and blah, blah, blah. And he goes, "Yeah, I can't remember the speech in the movie." And his scene partner said, "It's not in the movie. You wrote that. You just..."
Right.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So
that's okay. I mean, this is a bit of a tangent, but that's something people
kind of what we're doing now, right?
Well, yeah, but I think that's kind of why we love Quentin Tarantino so much, and something that I think people need to appreciate about him is that this guy loves movies probably more than anybody who's ever lived. And he probably knows films. I'm not going to say he knows films encyclopedically better than any human on the planet, because there's a lot of humans on the planet. But he knows films better than any filmmaker alive, probably. Maybe him and then Scorsese. But that's it. But in terms of, Scorsese also, he's more of a straight director, and Tarantino's kind of like the full.
Well, yeah, you're not going to see.
And this is a guy you can clearly see that he studied and analyzed with pleasure every little aspect and detail of the filmmaking process. He just loves everything about filmmaking.
Yeah.
To do those kinds of exercises. Yeah. I mean, just like, and to develop all those different, it's not natural. It's natural that somebody's like gets really good at directing, or really good at photography, or really good at writing stories, or really good at dialogue, right? But it's rare that you get one guy who gets really good at a lot of those things. And that's because he labored and obsessively studied it.
Yeah.
And
I remember my friend Guillaume, when they met Quentin in the ski lodge in Switzerland, had a question about his incidental character. Forgive me, I don't remember if it was Where Eagles Dare, which I know he's a fan of, or it might have been Guns of Navarone. It was a World War II movie where a guy walks in like he's Dracula. He's a Gestapo or SS officer. And he walks in with so much, and that's it. It's a way of saying you won't be seeing that character anymore. They were caught by that guy.
Oh, okay.
So the whole character of Christoph Waltz's character, the Jew hunter, who thinks of himself as like Sherlock Holmes detective, is Quentin Tarantino going, I wonder what that guy's like. I wonder what that guy, if he had his own movie as a jumping off point and was the villain,
Yeah.
And it became so important to him that he was auditioning everybody, and finally said, if I can't find him a German actor, we're just not going to do the movie, because it's not going to work. And of course, he didn't find a German actor. He found an Austrian actor, and Austrian actors are way better at playing Germans because they know how to mock the Germans with a little bit of the same way. If you watch, there's a bit, you can find it. It's Danny Kaye and Jose Ferrer, and it's a meeting between a British general and a German who's been captured of high rank, and how they're going to be civil to each other. And you just watch how, Danny Kaye, who's Jewish, does a German, and he does several flavors of German. He was a German dentist, which is funny in itself if you think about it, on the Cosby Show.
Wait, was Danny Kaye born in Germany?
No, I think Danny Kaye is a child of immigrants, and I'm sure he spoke multiple languages, and he was all over the world because he was a UNICEF childhood ambassador. But he was yeah. But I mean, that's there's a thing where like it's like people from one town, they characterize and mock people from another town. And that's kind of the relationship, I think, between a lot of Austrian actors on German acting with
I wonder what my cousins would have to say about that.
I also have to say, and this is totally off, we've just gone off the way Quentin termed,
my Austrian cousins, I mean.
Yeah, but I would, German speaking Austrian cousins, who are lovely, by the way. And thank you again for not the one of you not showing up so I could see Book of Mormon, which I would have never seen, which was the greatest time in the theater. And that was post-COVID, so we were all starved in New York.
For live entertainment.
But yeah, like, there was a time when I don't get into it. Anyway, but getting back to this movie, well, let's talk about Peter Finch.
Okay.
Finchy, as he was called by Peter O'Toole, my friend Finchy, was a drinking buddy of Peter O'Toole, one of many. But the story about Finchy was that
was he also buddies with Richard Harris?
Yes. I don't know. I've never heard a Richard Harris story about Finchy, but I've definitely heard
Peter O'Toole and Peter Finch.
Yeah. The two Peters.
Yeah.
So he was Finchy. So Finchy and him were drinking, and they were in Ireland. And the Irish bartender, old man, said, "Boys, I'm imitating Peter O'Toole, imitating the old man. I'm not making fun of any Irish. I'm just trying to do my best Peter O'Toole doing it. Because if you look back on the High Spirits one, my Peter O'Toole is good, and it's annoying, especially to Sean Behrens. Anyway, he said, "Boys, you've had enough. You've had enough. You're cut off. No more." And he was like, "No, we want much more," is what Peter O'Toole said. And so we bought the bar. So they wake up upstairs. And Peter Finch goes, "You know what we did last night, mate?" It's like, "No, what?" "We bought a bar." So they go downstairs, and the guy's there cleaning up, I guess. And he has the check, and he rips it up. He shows it to them, and he rips it up. But they became friends with him, and they loved him. And they found out one day that he died, and they wanted to go to his funeral. He doesn't. They
being
Finchy and Peter
found out that the pub owner died.
The pub owner is dead.
Yeah, they sort of took him on.
Yes.
They inherited him.
Yeah.
And so they found out he died, and they went.
And they go to the funeral. And there's a group of Irish mourners, and they get among them, and crying and tears and there and that. And they're at the wrong grave.
So they're basically wasted again. Or
yeah. They must have gone to the wake or something.
Right.
And Irish wakes are renowned. Some of my Irish friends have told me some stories, and I was like, you're allowed to do that? My whole family is cops and undertakers. Of course you can take the corpse to a bar. If the corpse wanted to go to every bar in the hometown, it's happy. So, drink all day and drink all night. And then the next, so I'm sure it has happened, Alcoholism is a disease. And if you found that story in any way amusing and love drinking, you might want to go to a 12-step meeting or talk to your friends. I'm just good old warning there. But yes, Finch was a drinking buddy. And also this movie starts with another Britishism or upper classism, which used to be both sides of the pond and now means something completely different, which is thoroughly pissed.
Yeah.
Thoroughly pissed. If you say thoroughly pissed right now in New York City, you'd be like, well, where is he? Like, should I apologize to him? Or is he like...
No, thoroughly pissed is still a across the pond, so to speak, a common term for being drunk.
But here, if I said to you, Dan is totally thoroughly pissed, you'd be like, could
if
you
said totally pissed, I would think angry. If you said thoroughly pissed,
okay,
I worked for enough Irish bar owners to be familiar with that. That lingo is actually kind of seeped into the New York culture.
Yes. And on New York, there is a reference right at the beginning, right after that, to the building of the George Washington Bridge when the lower level was only partially finished. Now, this is used often, screenwriters, as an example of really good screenwriting, because he gives you who these guys are and how long William Holden has been in the business since he was 26 years old in 51 when they're halfway done with the bottom level of it. And he tells this story about a cabbie trying to talk him out of suicide when he's really late for work. And that is such...
Well, explain the scene.
Howard is fired and they both get thoroughly pissed. And he just goes to Holden, and Holden is telling the story about
how he was late to shoot a news thing.
Yeah, a news thing. He's 26 years old.
At the George Washington Bridge.
Just a kid, and he has to be in the middle of the George Washington Bridge.
So to shoot a newscast.
Yeah, a newscast. And so he jumps in, he's in his pajamas, and he throws on his coat, he goes out and he hails the first cab, which is a really nice moment because he goes out and actually hails, so that Holden is playing the character drunk, because if you're walking into New York City street pretending to hail it, that's a very specific gesture, especially back then in New York.
Right.
And you're like, is he gonna get hit? And he ends up telling the driver, take me to the middle of the lower level of the George Washington Bridge. And the cabbie goes, don't do it, young man. You got so much to live for. And they laugh,
and they start dying laughing.
Each other. And you know that these are middle-aged, this is what they've lived up to. This is so much that they've lived up to, is this sort of...
It's great writing.
It's great writing, and it's not like... in Austin Powers, there's a character played by Michael York named Cecil Exposition. Hello, I'm Cecil Exposition. And he just tells Austin what he needs to know that has happened so far. And this is a more interesting way of doing it. And scripts of this time period would always have characters going, well, I've been an acting teacher well, if you know, then why am I telling you? Right? It makes more sense to swap it around and you go, well, you've been an acting teacher for 23, and I'm like 32 years. You would say it to me, it makes sense. That's better dialogue than me going, Abram, let me tell you, I have been, no one says that.
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
No, it's a clinic in how to make a great film. It's a movie that if you really want to wrap your head around how good it is, you kind of have to see it a few times.
Multiple times.
There's so many layers to this movie that it's almost difficult to even talk about it.
Yeah.
Because you could zero in on literally like we played that that one scene. I mean, there's just so many gems. It's just gem after gem
Okay,
after
so
gem in
if
this movie.
you
It's
were in
like
an
a gift
acting
that keeps on
class,
giving.
yeah, if you
What?
were in an acting class in New York, what's called a master class, that monologue is how long? 3,
No, technically, it's about 5.5 minutes.
5.5 minutes. Okay. You're usually allotted 15 minutes of time to work, sometimes up to a half hour of work, and then double that again for your critique or reworking with a teacher. That's usually how a class is structured. So I have watched many a 2-minute and under monologue be broken down for up to 45 minutes to an hour sometimes, and not as good as that written wise.
Sure.
This is why Stella Adler was so big on you have to honor the playwright. You have, not like those people at the Actors Studio who don't give a damn about the words, which is not true, but okay. Stella, these people
I think there's, listen, I can sympathize, like, from the musician standpoint, coming from a classical background, but also a jazz background. I see the value in being able to improvise a little bit and have some leeway. But I think that it's like when I was, this is,
Could you imagine
let me ask you something.
Okay.
In this film, how I would say that there's very little deviation from the script, right? Wouldn't you agree?
Probably almost none.
Probably a none. Okay. So that's the mark. Like, listen, if it's like, if the songwriter's good enough,
Oh yeah.
play the notes.
Yeah.
And if it's not good enough, then don't play the song. And like, I remember being in class with Jackie McLean of blessed memory,
Mhm.
the great alto saxophone legend, and he was the head of the program that I was in. And I remember the greatest compliment ever I got from him, and I was probably one of the worst musicians in the whole. I was probably one of the weakest improvisers in the whole thing, but I knew I had a deep love for the song and the music.
Mhm.
And we were doing Star Eyes, the jazz standard, and he's like, "Okay, play the head." And one guy's on the saxophone, he's a monster, and he's playing it, and he's kind of like fluffing the notes, and he's like, "All right, you play." And then he got around to, he's like, "Play." He's like, "The guitarist has the melody," and so that was a compliment in the sense that I had a deep enough appreciation. I wasn't just trying to rush through the melody to get to the improvising. The melody's beautiful, and every note of it is, they picked it for a certain reason. If the writer is good, and like in a film like this, you've got to do the work to make it work for you as an actor. You've got to let that push you to be a better actor, as far as I'm concerned. If it's a type of script where the writer wants there to be room for improv, then great, have at it. I don't know. How do you feel about that characterization?
I agree. I mean,
Like, don't butcher my beautiful music, you know?
yeah. But if you've got like if you've got someone who's covering it who's known for improvisation, then you should know, there should be some kind of I don't know. I remember when Morricone worked with Yo-Yo Ma, and Yo-Yo Ma wanted notes on how to play it on the cello, because the pieces that were usually played by other instruments were now him soloing on the cello. And Morricone's like, "I'm not here to give you any notes. you're a master of cello. Like, do what you want with that part."
Well, but was the part written out?
I think he approached
Morricone to ask him more specifically, "Do you want me to play it more like this or more like that?" Yeah, I see.
Like,
yeah, but that's even like a finer point.
Yeah.
Like, that would be like that would be like Ned Beatty going to Sidney Lumet, the director, saying, "Do you want me to play it like this or play it like that?"
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
different than like, can I change this word around or that word
Oh, no,
around,
no.
or can I play
Yeah,
a
I
different note?
mean,
That's but that's an example of the writer having enough respect for the actor or the musician to be like, no, I trust you to do this the right way.
Yeah.
Far be it from me to tell you how to play. I wrote it down and just do it your way.
and
And that's
Chayefsky, you know,
but that's a good attitude to have with actors, I think,
yeah,
as well. Like if you cast these actors because you trust them,
yeah.
give them some room to do it their way.
I remember George DiCenzo telling me he was hired with Nathan Lane to do a play that was definitely directed by George C. Scott. And I think also George C. Scott
Interesting.
was in it. And he never gave them notes on character.
George C. Scott never gave them notes.
No, nothing.
Yeah.
And one day I think Nathan Lane asked, or maybe George remembers it that way, and George actually asked, because I think George was a little bit more insecure than he let on, and I don't know. But he definitely was an inspiration to me. He said, "Well, aren't you going to give us some notes,
Right?
some guidance?" And his answer was, "Well, I cast you, didn't I?"
Yeah.
Enough said.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah, and sometimes that's all the actor needs to hear.
And
Famous they just want a little bit of like a vote of confidence, or some kind of. It's almost like just, no, buddy, you got this.
Yeah.
I think what it is, it's also like you're asking because it's almost like asking permission to do the part. Just can I give this a go? Like,
yeah.
Or is there something you really don't want me to do? Or,
Well, he said right off the bat, before she even came to the table, supposedly, Faye, Sidney Lumet said, if you put one drop of vulnerability in this role, I'll cut it out.
This is what Sidney Lumet said?
To her, to Faye Dunaway.
Why do you think he did that?
It's a very specific direction, especially using the word vulnerability, because in acting, and especially at that time with the gender role thing, vulnerability was a big word. And I've seen them tell actresses vulnerability is your strength. I was told as a man, I really just thought who I felt like and looked like was all I had to give in life. How I had been cast in life after high school. Because remember, I went right from high school, like I looked 13 years old at this point in life, maybe 12, right into a master class with Herbert Berghoff. And I said to him, if you take my sensitivity away from Hamlet and To Be or Not to Be, it takes away my gift, what I am. And he goes, that's why you should never play it. Because then you're gilding the lily, is what he told me, and I really wanted to be, like Gene Wilder, like just sort of like, so like says it, never realizing that Gene is doing a character.
Right, exactly.
That my mother is doting on, right? And
yeah.
I'm like, because I'm a kid.
He's doing a funny twinkly eye,
doing a funny
weirdo thing.
Eye thing that he knows it works.
Right. So when Sidney Lumet says this to Faye Dunaway,
I think
it maybe it's because she had certain tendencies. I don't know.
Well, he knew her. She was a member of the Actors Studio at the time, and he was there a lot, I think.
Whatever that is, sounds like it was a very personal direction.
Oh, no, it was. Yeah. It was, because she was at a point in her career where, there are actresses now who have a buddy, who is a writer, and they employ them
to write for them,
to write the script more like them.
Yeah.
And that's, because they're a brand. And when you have a brand, And guys, if you have friends out there and you have friends who you can help, or one of you does, you should do this because you can't get there alone. Okay, like remember and if you date anyone, break up nice with them. It's just the drama of, well, like this movie, a lot of life is spin. like wherever that communist radical group is, send me to hang out with them, man, because could you imagine making a movie about the alt left and it was like them now? Like that would never be done ever.
Wait, what do you mean?
Just the way they're like, there seems to be a knowledge that there are these clubs all over town of different armies, which are gangs. And they're all saying, now it's our turn to kidnap an heiress. And everyone.
You're talking about the theme within this film where
of making the terrorist group.
Yeah, giving the terrorist group their own program.
Like a reality show.
And you're saying what would you imagine it to be like today if we took a bunch of left
it feels like inside. Can you imagine
if we have like an Antifa, like an Antifa 24-hour Antifa news
24-hour Antifa and Proud Boys of Dallas.
I think what the world we're living in today, it's like if you took Network and then you took Idiocracy and you made them have a baby with each other, that's the reality we're in now.
Well, yeah, we could go off.
Those two movies are the most prescient films of all time.
Well, we should watch Idiocracy because it's not everyone knows it.
No, but it is sort of an obscure film. We should do it.
It is, yeah, and but I think that like if you look at early reality TV, right, like they did Interventions. They did what was the one where they used to take kids to jail?
Scared Straight,
and guys would be like, put that, you know what that is? That's Jello. Put it all over your lips. Like it'll be when when he gets to the kid's face. like that, like can you imagine that would just but in a way, like that's what she's dreaming up.
Yeah.
It's like the early days of reality TV. Because remember I remember this.
Yeah, if you think about shows like Scared Straight, I mean, that kind of shit, it puts all this other Kardashian stuff to shame.
What? Yeah. Like, what was the one where they made strangers live together?
Oh, The Real World. Well, that was the first one.
Okay, so The Real World. If you remember The Real World, New York.
5 strangers, living together in a house together. Very different kind of people. Yeah, what a ridiculous show. Okay, so everybody loved that.
The Real World, like casting directors back then, there were no reality casting directors. They didn't know, they didn't know what was getting ratings. They didn't know what created buzz. They didn't know, I'm sure they hadn't read Aristotle and worked with these producers. These were all people who, wanted to work in television and hey, I guess this is working. So, the first year it is like they put these people together and they learn to live together. That's the Real World New York, which is funny because it's New York. Like it's the most bland and they're all friends. And I think I saw a reunion 10 years later and they're still keeping touch. And, it's like,
But there was plenty of drama that they stirred up in that one too.
Oh, yeah. But when they got to San Francisco, they were casting for drama.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
They were like,
that's right. So they learned from the first one, like what people liked and what got the good ratings. And by the time they did the next one, it wasn't actually, that was the end of the first, like basically what you're saying is that the first season of The Real World was the first and the last reality TV show. Cause it was never reality TV show after that again.
It was as much a reality show as you could say like documentaries where like someone goes, this is my nephew Shane.
No, the way you do it is
the whole movie.
The way you do it is you go to Skid Row
in
downtown LA and you pick a guy from every different kind of. I mean, I don't know if you've been following this guy on YouTube, Mark Leda, Soft White Underbelly. How much I know I may have brought him up, but he
Yeah.
basically interviews a lot of degenerates,
Okay.
people that are like really, really struggling with life. But he does a lot of guys that are on Skid Row because his studio is in downtown LA.
Okay.
So he'll go to Skid Row and literally pick guys up off the street and interview them. And he's done thousands of them. And I don't even think he's published most because like they don't all work for television, right?
Yeah.
But he sits them down. He does very little talking. And he kind of just like, he's like, so how'd you grow up? Did you have your mother and your father? Oh yeah. Yeah. You had a dysfunction. Okay. So, how was school? Did you get along with it? And they just basically walk him through their trauma and how they ended up in their present situation. But I was just thinking, like, in the course of like, I think that on a certain level, like reality TV is getting more sophisticated. If you think about YouTube, like what the platform that we're on right now, discussing this movie, I mean, there's a humanity to reality TV that's creeping in now that it's democratized, and we get to decide what we want to talk about, and other people get to. I mean, you and I can decide to talk about this movie and let our conversation go in whatever direction, and whoever is watching can decide to watch or not, and it's on us whether we're able to get people to watch it.
Yeah.
But the point is that people will find their audiences. People will create content that is actually more meaningful to people, and more people are going to be pouring into the things that they relate to that help them to get a grasp on their own humanity. Now that you've got thousands and thousands of people broadcasting all over the world, so you get a lot of the stupid stuff. You get a lot of the bullshit with social media and hype and ratings and this like and this comment and drama. You get all of that.
But
so through that, like you can.
That's like Team Dunaway, right? You get the kids on
exactly.
On the internet who are like, I want to go viral. And then you get people who are like, I would just love to have patrons. And
but that's what I'm saying. There was a time when you couldn't. There was a time when you couldn't.
I love Old Havana. Do you like that? You still use Old Havana? So if anyone's watching, Old Havana, who are these real bearded men? Which I like this beard bomb. I didn't make that sexy, but that was our first. Like you could do that now, right? Like just like you can do that, and maybe someone will.
No, the point I'm making though that I was trying to make is that there was a time when what was being portrayed in this film actually did reach fruition. To where we're bombarded with media that that isn't doing us any good, that isn't helping us or elevating us anyway. It's trashy, it's demeaning, it's demoralizing and dehumanizing, and we don't really have a choice because it's whatever they show us on TV. All I'm saying is now, you still have all of that, but at least now there's a little bit more of a shining light through that. You can decide not to watch the Kardashians and decide to watch something that's more, elevating. And so in a way, like not to be super duper, like just to give like the bleak message of this film a little bit of a, positive spin to it. It's not all like, I'm actually grateful that we're living in 2022 as opposed to 2003. Or 1995 for that matter, or 1976. Honestly, the idea that there's like people like to go back and think, the glory days when everybody was on the same page and we all got the same news and we're all brainwashed exactly the same way. And America is so horrible now. Everybody's at each other's throats and everybody's got different ideas. I'm like, you know what? On some level, that's fucking great. Like, I know that's a problem in some ways, but I'd rather live in a world where people are at each other's throats and disagreeing, as long as more than one idea sees the light of day. As long as we're not being completely brainwashed.
Well, that's why the art of conversation is we need to get back to it because people don't listen. People don't even know, like if I'm having a conversation and I want to give a tip, I'm not saying your idea is wrong. I'm just trying to help you not make the same mistakes I made when I was 19 years old, buddy.
Right.
I know it's a new time and I get it, but I also see that like, you know, a lot of the problems that, and Jordan Peterson addresses this in one of those clips that are going around about the creative person. They have to get up to the highest rung of the hierarchy ladder in order to contribute where they're needed, but they don't do well in structure at all. Right. And I could never deal with structure. I couldn't deal with it. I just couldn't. And now a creative person with like a few of his, they don't even have to be your friends. If you just learn to collaborate on the same goal and not, otherwise it's, when is he going to leave the band and go solo? Like if you like, who's more about the music, who's more about, really, I want an acting career. Who did, I was in a great band. And I think I contributed mostly to its breaking up because I was more serious about my acting career because I was too dumb to realize you could make it other ways because I read many books on how people got there. And the ones I related to got there through a system that had been drilled into my brain. Like, you can be creative as you want. So long as 1 goes to 2, goes to 3, there's levels. Okay. Because you can't play a game without levels, right? Like Dungeons & Dragons.
Right.
You know?
Well, that's how they train you in school to think about progress.
Yes, that's
I mean, it's like that Alan Watts audio that's been clipped many times into like cartoons on YouTube. You can look this up. Alan Watts. I don't remember the title of it, but it's like the carrot being dangled in front of you your whole life until the day you die. It's like, well, if you finish first grade, then you get to go to second grade. And second grade is awesome because that's a stepping stone to third grade. And then when you finally get to 12th grade, then you graduate and something happens. It's the end of this thing. And now life begins. But no, now you get to go to college where you can get even more education to get and even if you don't go that track, there's some other track. There's, right. Oh, you want to be an actor. You start off with this guy and then you go. Meanwhile, some guys figure it out and they're like, no, there's like sneaky things. Like you know this guy and you learn this trick and you do this thing and you get out of the matrix. But the matrix is in many ways constructed. Not entirely consciously, but sometimes it is. Sometimes it's conspired to control people. But whether it's in nature or to whatever degree it's natural or it's conspiratorial based on human conspiracy, it has the effect of keeping people in line, keeping people to conform. And if you have a grand idea, something very important that you want to share with the world or that you want to do or some kind of great impact that you want to make in the world is not going to make it easy for you.
No.
And that's simply the nature of things.
Speaking of me knowing nothing about the world, someone is in this movie who represents a time in my life when I knew nothing. At the end of the movie, you see Mikey from the Box of Life cereal. And that is I can't remember his name, who Mikey was, but he was a Gilchrist. And his mother was an agent, Pat Gilchrist. And she was one of the first agents who brought me in through a guy I worked with, who got me into a NYU undergrad film. What's his name? Oh, shoot me. JFK and Natural Born Killers and
Oliver Stone.
Oliver Stone was the adjunct professor that year. So they told me my performance would be seen by Oliver Stone. That's how Jamie sold it to me. I went, I did this thing. It's called Brown Belt Karate Maniacs. You'll never find it. I found the director on Facebook years later, Mary Jo Matsumoto. Anyway, somehow I got into Pat Gilchrist's office, and there's a Life cereal box that she didn't frame. She just had with her son.
Right.
And the whole family, all the Gilchrists had the same face. They all looked like Mikey. The mother looked like Mikey, and all the brothers who were in the commercial too looked like Mikey. And Mikey was a legend in New Jersey. That was like, when they started like having momagers. And, if your kid could go to Barbizon and be a model or just look like one. Right. Like these like scammy, like John Robert Powers schools were all, so, I got into Sage's office, and I think I remember her eating, but that could just be me remembering Mikey because the face looks the same. And me going, oh yeah, I'm a friend of your client, Jamie Marsh's. And she goes, yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He was on Broadway. Mm-hmm. Neil Simon. So, he was in the first cast of Lost in Yonkers.
Right. Okay.
And I thought that was a big deal. Like, the Jamie. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, your agent doesn't get you jobs. Your agent doesn't generate work. You have to check in with them and like build a relationship. But I didn't know that. I was,
No, they're the guy that you get to pay after you get the work, right?
Yeah.
After you do all the hard work to get
they negotiate,
Yeah, sure,
and
sure.
But I mean, just like anybody else, you're not going to say
you need them, just like you need lawyers, just like you need everything.
You're not going to say no to 10% of the cut of one of your buddies if he actually, is good throwing darts, or if someone to entertain at your sister's wedding. You don't want to. This is something I learned, and this is not about Pat Gilchrist. This is in general. Actors really love to work. People in the film industry love to work. Most people like to make money. So someone told me once, your agent doesn't want to work. Your agent wants to make money. Your agent is not dreaming of working for the rest of their life. They're dreaming that you make it.
Well, he wants to know that, if you make it and you get lots of work, then that'll get him more money in the future.
He'll be secure.
He'll have more options to get more clients.
Yeah. Yeah. Or not have to.
Or not have to, right.
Or not have to, I mean, it depends on their age. It depends like how
depends on what level they're operating.
Come from, this is a woman who knew what happens when your kids were in a big national commercial. And then, and it was exciting. And then, she wasn't going to get it, I was really excited to be in her office and wondering why and it's just like, man, this is my job.
Right.
And I love my job. I love my job. I would never be that way with an acting student.
Right.
But I also vet them, screen them and vet them. So, and tell them if there's a better place to go than because they don't know enough to study with me, or we have a different opinion. But anyway, I just remembered that there was a segue because I was like, oh man, that's Pat, that's Mikey. He likes it. Hey, and I used to eat Life cereal. That was my breakfast of choice.
Life cereal?
Life cereal.
For me, it was Kix.
Oh yeah.
That was and my mom hated it.
Too much sugar. They wouldn't let us have anything.
Kix had no sugar practically. And it's like the one cereal that like you could, if you had like neurotic Jewish mother who wouldn't let you have any sweet cereals, you could maybe convince her. But here's the thing. They would let me eat. It was the cereal that kids love that moms approve of, right? That was the whole fucking selling point.
I remember the jingle was, kids love Kix for what Kix has got. Mom loves Kix for what Kix is not. That was the jingle. Okay,
that must be a much older version of it. It was like, I think it was like kid tested, mother approved.
Mother approved. Like yeah.
Yeah. When I was growing up. And so it was such a scam because I wasn't crazy about the sugar cereals. but she made me like shredded wheat, like stuff that just literally had like it tasted like cardboard, right?
Ugh.
So I'm like, somehow in combination with the media, I convinced my mother to start letting us eat Kix as a cereal. And here's the thing. It's not that she tasted it and was like, this is too sweet after all. It's that she saw how much we liked it, that we would have seconds and thirds. And that's where she was like, and she was right. I mean, let's be real. Like, but it's the fact that like she knew how much we liked it that we probably shouldn't be eating it. And
yeah, they say when you're getting in training for whatever fight or look good in a movie, it's like this good rule. If it goes in your mouth and it tastes good and you want to keep eating it, spit it out.
Then again,
that
if you
over
change
time.
yourself, obviously, but I do attribute the fact that I have a taste for healthy food.
Yeah.
To how brutal my mom was about my diet growing up. Like, she also says that I was the least picky eater of all of the kids. So maybe there's something special there.
Maybe.
But yeah, that's quite a tangent. At any rate, we're at an hour 20.
We haven't even mentioned Robert Duvall. We're at an hour 20.
We didn't even get to Robert Duvall.
We didn't even get to Robert Duvall.
That's the
thing.
thing.
Has one little short scene, and she won Best Supporting Actress as his suffering wife, but she's only suffering with lines, really, in one speech. That is a scene. We could do another episode on Network.
Maybe we'll revisit it in the future because it's one of those movies. I mean, I've only seen this movie like 4 times. Which is like, I think it's a lot for a movie that you just only plan to see once. But this is one of those movies like this, like The Godfather. I've seen The Godfather like 100 times. I've seen, most of Tarantino's films dozens and dozens of times, and Scorsese and all the classic. I guess all the classic Italian filmmakers of the last handful of decades, but no. But this is a movie you could literally see this movie 100 times.
Yeah.
One more, and I plan to see it many more times.
Yeah. One more thing about Paddy Chayefsky, I remember.
Yeah. What about
while you're wearing a Bob Fosse? They were going to start a production company together.
Fosse and Chayefsky
and Neil Simon. Yeah, the three of them together, and they were going to call it, according to Bob, Flash, Boredom, and Whimsy. And Chayefsky was boredom.
Why?
Because that's what he'd be in charge of, all the real dialogue and the kitchen sink realism.
Wait, so Flash, what?
Flash, Boredom, and Whimsy. So Fosse was Flash.
And Whimsy is Neil Simon?
Yeah, so Flash, Boredom, and Whimsy.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Did they ever collaborate on anything, those three?
They had the rights for a while. They were being offered Dino De Laurentiis's remake of King Kong. And that...
They never did it, though.
No, but that's how... what's her name? Sam Shepard's wife got into King Kong and almost ruined her career because she was dating Bob Fosse. Okay. She was in All That Jazz. Who am I thinking of? You know who I mean. Everyone knows who I mean. She was like the biggest thing in the 80s. She had come back.
Wait, the young dancer?
No, she's the muse that he's talking to through the whole movie.
Oh, through that recent Fosse Verdun
miniseries? No, in All That Jazz.
Oh, in All That Jazz, right.
Hold on, it's killing me.
I don't remember.
Hold on, I gotta say it because Jessica Lange was in King Kong because Jessica Lange got in
because she was messing with Bob Fosse.
She wasn't messing with him. They were.
No, I mean I'm using the colloquial meaning they were hooking up.
Oh yeah, they were hooking up. They were dating. They were an item, and she also knew Tennessee Williams. She was well studied and knew people, but she was around Flash, Boredom, and Whimsy, and for a while it looked like Flash, Boredom, and Whimsy were going to be the people responsible for bringing you King Kong.
But that never materialized.
Yeah, where he jumped. No, well, they made it, but not with them.
Right, that's what I'm
Just
saying.
imagine Paddy Chayefsky writing King Kong being directed.
Why not?
And the jokes by Neil Simon.
Was Chayefsky considerably older than the other two, or were they all around the same age?
I just know that Bob danced at Paddy Chayefsky's funeral, but I don't. I think that Neil and Paddy Chayefsky were closer in age to each other, and I assume.
Oh,
Paddy
Chayefsky was pretty young. Paddy Chayefsky was born in 1923.
Okay.
Neil Simon. Let's see. Neil Simon was born in 27. Okay, so yeah, he's older, a little older. And then Bob Fosse was born in 1927. Okay, so not that big of a difference.
Okay,
but yeah, he was like 4 years older than them. Okay.
And all three of them used to, at least in Fosse Verdon, they do. So that his daughter had approval of. They used to compare notes on a term used in this movie that I've only heard in this movie, and from the words of George DiCenzo's mouth, which is their coxmanship.
Oh yeah, coxmanship. Yeah,
coxmanship. Was he a coxman?
You don't hear that word very often anymore.
Is he a coxman?
Yeah.
Yeah. How's your coxmanship? Pretty good. Maybe a 5.
I feel like that's a term that like 19th century English like elites and men would throw around with other men, but you'd never hear a woman say that word.
I know. No, I'm sure that Victorian ladies and stuff was.
They had different words for that.
I hear he's not. No, I'm sure they said, "Hey, I hear he's known for his coxmanship," and whatever. Who knows?
They would have a more euphemistic way of saying it.
I wasn't there.
Yeah,
and I haven't read any.
But it's also funny because it clearly this movie is almost 50 years old. And hearing that word today feels kind of anachronistic, but I think it was even anachronistic within the context of this film. I think that he picked that word for this older guy talking to a much younger woman that he can't relate to, and that language I think kind of was very deliberate.
Well, George was 30 years older than me, so he was 81, so he used it. So he probably heard it from his dad.
He probably heard it in this movie.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
He brought it back.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never heard an adult or somebody my dad.
You haven't met a great man
like George DiCenzo. I never did meet George DiCenzo. All right, folks. Until next time.
I'm
going to hit that magic button and we'll disappear here in a minute.
And next week, Wag the Dog by David.
Wag the Dog. Wag